Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer. Buddha at the Gas Pump is an ongoing series of interviews with spiritually awakening people. I've done nearly 600 of them now. If this is new to you and you'd like to check out previous ones, please go to batgap.com, B-A-T-G-A-P, and look under the past interviews menu. This program is made possible through the support of appreciative listeners and viewers. So if you appreciate it and would like to help support it, there's a PayPal button on every page of the website, and there's also a page of other ways to donate if you don't want to use PayPal. My guest today is Teresa Chung. Welcome, Teresa.
Hello, Rick. Hello.
Teresa's in the UK. She says she lives near Windsor Castle, which is not entirely relevant to this interview, but anyway, something she told me.
Very relevant, given the weekend.
Yeah, true. She said she did an interview yesterday with some outfit in Australia, right? And they wanted to know about Harry and Meghan the whole time.
Yes. Asked me to be their royal correspondent.
Yeah. Maybe you missed your calling. Anyway, Teresa was born into a family of spiritualists. She'll explain what that means. She has a master's degree from King's College, Cambridge, and has written numerous best-selling dream, afterlife, angel, ritual, and spiritual books and encyclopedias, including 2 Sunday Times top 10 bestsellers. She's been a guest on Russell Brand's Under the Skin, which I listened to the other day. That was pretty funny. It must be hard being interviewed by him. He's like bouncing off the walls.
The two of us were bad. It was terrible.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. He's a very funny guy. And also on Coast to Coast AM, and featured in numerous newspapers and media. And the titles of some of your books are The Truth About Angels, let's see, Dream Dictionary A to Z, the Premonition Code, The Afterlife is Real, The Sensitive Soul. So those are some of your books, and we'll be talking about all those things, and this will be a free-flowing conversation. As I always tell my guest, Teresa, just don't restrict yourself to what I happen to think to ask you. If something comes to mind that you'd like to talk about, just launch into it, and people will be sending in some questions also. So we'll just have a lot of fun for the next couple of hours. So where would you like to start? I'll let you decide among all the things we're going to talk about. Where would you like to start?
At the beginning?
All right, let's start there. Yes.
You want to know why I do
sure.
this?
Well, how did you get into all this?
I was kind of born into it. My mother was a professional astrologer, medium. That's what our family was like. You know, I grew up believing everybody could talk to dead people or consult tarot cards or whatever. And then somehow I was blessed to get a place at King's College, Cambridge, to read theology because I'm interested in spirituality. And of course, when I went to Cambridge, I realized that not everybody talks to dead people or believes in astrology and crystals and all that. And it's been I hate that word journey, but it has been a lifelong journey now of trying to understand the spiritual, the esoteric, and writing many, many books about it. And all of my books, actually, if you go back in time, because I've been doing this 20 years, as I said, I've been blessed. I've been with all the publishers writing about this. I can see it's me trying to actually learn along the way.
Yeah.
You know, my intuitive understanding of it, because it's what I'm born into, and my doubt has played a huge part in it as well. Because I do actually, at the place I'm at now, which is really interesting, is doubting a lot, and you know, and thinking, well, don't believe everything because you're told it. You know, I'm alarmed at the moment in the world how many people are so very gullible and willing to follow so easily. So that's where I am. That's why my latest book, The Truth About Angels, actually looks at this. What is going on in the new age movement at the moment? All these gurus we have everywhere, all these people, and I'm looking into that. So, as you can see, I'm a serial writer, a serial spiritual writer, and in some ways, I was looking at you actually before I did this interview. I mean, you have interviewed so many people, and you've kind of got to a place, you said, where you don't feel you belong anywhere now. You're too much of a rebel to be. I read that somewhere, that you felt that you were a kind of a rebel, and you had your own individualistic view now of spirituality.
Kind of.
And
I mean,
I found that interesting.
Yeah, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I respect all kinds of authorities or traditions and whatnot. But like you were saying about doubt, there's a famous quote from the Buddha where he says, don't believe anything just because somebody says it. Even if I say it, the Buddha is saying, check it out with your own thought processes, with your own discrimination, and determine, what veracity it may have. He didn't use those words, but that kind of a point. I think that spirituality should be a scientific enterprise. I think that a scientific way of thinking is extremely helpful to a spiritual aspirant. And I also think that spirituality has things to offer science that science will be very impoverished without. And I know that you're very interested in that, and you've been involved with folks at IONS and Institute of Noetic Sciences and so on.
Well, I actually co-authored with Dr. Julia Mossbridge when she was still a scientist at IONS. I now believe she's a fellow and has moved on. And,
I met Julia. She did a heart math test on me one time.
She's a force, isn't she? And it was wonderful that book actually I did, because as I said, I'd written book after spiritual topics, but I wrote about them from a believer's perspective. A lot of my books were collecting true experiences of people who've had near-death experiences, afterlife science, precognition. And I wasn't aware of the science out there. I mean, I was creating all these books for the converted, if you were. And it was only when I stumbled across the Institute of Noetic Sciences about 6 years ago that it blew my mind that there were scientists out there looking at the inner world in the same way as the external world and analyzing it as data. And I have stalked them ever since. And they actually very kindly awarded my readers a landing page, because I talk about them so much now, so that if you've read a Teresa Chung book like The Afterlife is Real, or An Angel Called My Name, that was my Sunday Times top 10, which is people who believe in angels. And if you've read this and you want to learn more about the science, go to this landing page, and there's 3 free gifts from the Institute of Noetic Sciences on there, like a chapter of Dean's book,
Dean Radin.
A lecture, Dean Radin. He did the foreword to the Premonition Code for myself and Julia, which was wonderful. And that book, to go back to that book, was wonderful because you had someone like me who the scientific community would probably, kind of think, laugh at me in a way, because I come at it from a very sort of, I lived it, I was born into it, and here are stories, non-scientific, collaborating with someone like Dr. Julia Mossbridge. And we created this rather strange book, but which has now got a kind of a cult following of its own, called The Premonition Code, where I'm going through the book. I do feel a bit like the comic relief in the book, going, but Julia, I don't understand. Tell me about the physics. And she's sort of like saying, okay, Teresa, here we go, and explain it. And she's created this sort of scientific system to test precognitives. But what she needed for that book was my database, because I'm accessible, I don't know, or because I've simply been around so long. People, have got a Teresa Chung book, especially in the UK, if you're interested in the paranormal. They write to me. I leave my email address in all my books. So I've got this database of stories of people who have experienced precognition or intuition or afterlife encounters. That played into the book as well. So it was a wonderful combination of science meets spirit actually happening together. And that book's now been translated in so many languages. We had a website. It made the front page of the Daily Mail over here.
That's great.
Unbelievable. I went on to Russell Brand to talk about it. So it was a wonderful collaboration. But since then, I've still continued to stalk the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and I'm still in regular touch with them. And I really enjoy that. I've had all of them on my podcast talking to me. Arnold Delorme, Helena, Gareth Yount,
Dean.
The whole team. Dean, of course, Miss Dean. Yes. I think if there was a movie about a scientist, they would have to cast Dean. A scientist. He's just how you would imagine a scientist studying the paranormal to be like. But he was terrific fun on my podcast.
Yeah, he's great.
He's actually
got such a sense of humor, actually.
Yes. So they're all on my podcast, and that formed the basis of season 1 of my podcast, was my interviews with all these scientists. But I also had Penny Sartori on there, and Eben Alexander, who has become a kind of friend. I met him when he came to the UK. We had a coffee together, and he was fascinating to listen to as well on the podcast. He talked about his near-death experience. So, and then since then, I've just gone on to do more and more interviews with practitioners, experts, authors on my podcast.
Yeah, that's great. I listened to a few episodes of it. It's called
kind of
White Shores. Is that what it's called?
And do you know why it's called
Why?
that?
I don't know.
Lord of the
Oh,
Rings.
really? I forget that reference.
Ian McKellen as Gandalf. I think it's in the second or third. I can't remember. I'm not that. But basically, the hobbits think they're going to die because the orcs are attacking, and he says, "I fear death," and Gandalf turns to him and says, "You needn't fear it." Because and then he has this beautiful speech. It's on YouTube, any Lord of the Rings, and he says it's white shores. It's a far green country under a different sunrise, and he says, "Well, that's not so bad, is it?" You know, he's comforting that there is life after death, and it's called White Shores. And of course, that beautiful scene at the end when Frodo goes off in the boat. So I love Lord of the Rings, and so it was my kind of tribute to that. And in the first episode, it was great fun because I asked all the scientists if they could be a character in Lord of the Rings, which one would it be? Guess which one the most of them chose.
Probably Gandalf. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them chose the ring, which was
the ring
worrying.
itself. Yeah. Ooh.
Yes. No, but I'm trying to, in a way, what I'm trying to do, because we do talk about really sort of, paranormal topics, science of consciousness, but to do that in that light-hearted way seems to have worked because the podcast has proved quite popular, probably because it is so surreal.
Yeah.
When you listen to it.
That's nice. Your Lord of the Rings reference reminded me of a scene from Star Wars where Obi-Wan Kenobi is fighting Darth Vader, and he says to Darth Vader, "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." And then he ends up getting struck down, and but then he's kind of working from the other side after that.
But you see, these iconic movies like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, I firmly believe the reason they have touched so many lives is the underlying spirituality.
Oh, yeah.
It's a way to teach these spiritual lessons in a way that wouldn't maybe necessarily reach people with the earnest podcasts or books. And I had this idea actually, and that's how I ended up talking to Piers Morgan, because I had this idea, the Force in Star Wars. And I teamed up with the head of the Jedi Church to write a book called Become the Force. And that was an interesting project. I mean, I'm not an obsessive Star Wars fan. I just thought all those people queuing up in the theatre to see Star Wars, what they're queuing up for really isn't the special effects and all that and the actors. It's the spiritual theme, the Force. We all understand what that is. So that was an interesting project to work on as well. As I see, I'm trying very different ways to bring spirituality out of just talking to the converted all the time. I really love also engaging with skeptics. That's why I went on Russell Brand. He's not a skeptic. He is actually very spiritually inclined, but that's a fun episode to listen to because you've got him going, "What?" when I'm talking about life after death and all that. But I've also Michael Marshall, who's a well-known Guardian critic, skeptic over here. I've sparred with him, and I love doing that because I'm not trying to convert anyone, but I'm just trying to talk to people who normally wouldn't engage in spirituality, because I do all the festivals and the talks and everything, but 9 times out of 10, the people who listen are inclined to believe anyway. And I think it's really interesting when people from totally different backgrounds, that's why I love the Premonition Code with Julia. You had a scientist, a neuroscientist, with a general spiritual writer. It was interesting mix, and I like that. I like pushing the boundaries, if you were, in a way, and getting dialogue about these issues about what's the meaning of life, why are we here?
Yeah. Well, as you know, there are many scientists who aren't really scientific, as Dean often discusses, and David Lorimer, with the Galileo Commission and people like that, they basically have the attitude, well, you say you've got all this data about premonition or life after death or whatever, but that can't be true. Therefore, I'm not going to look at it. Now, that's not a scientific attitude. And, to my way of thinking, anything could be a viable hypothesis to investigate. Angels, for instance. You're going to talk about angels today. Do they exist? Well, you may doubt it, you may believe it, but you don't really know, and you can investigate it. And maybe there's some evidence that ought to be looked at. And, a couple hundred years from now, maybe people look back and think it was ridiculous that there was this schism between science and spirituality. There's just reality, and both bring different tools to the table for exploring it.
Absolutely, it's part of the human experience. Since woman began, people have had these supernatural, these supernormal experiences. They're part of the human experience. Why on earth deny them? I don't know the reason for them, but why not study them? Why not understand them? I don't think also you should put people on a pedestal who have these powers or these visions. I don't believe that either. How's that going to help you? I think it should be all about your direct personal experience and that activating that angel gene within you rather than following someone who says, I've seen angels. And that's what my latest book is about. It's about, if you want to see angels, start behaving like one, start activating it, look in the mirror and smile at yourself with eyes of true love, because most people struggle to love themselves. That's where you start, with a bit of self-love and, grow your own wings. And that's what I like to see more of at the end as I move towards the latter part, the twilight part of my writing career, because I really am a serial writer. You have serial killers, but I'm a serial writer. I've written so many spiritual books now. It's a blessing to be in that position. But the pandemic,
Teresa the scripter.
COVID.
Instead of Jack the Ripper, you got Teresa the scripter.
Right, that's my new tagline. But what COVID, the pandemic, has done in a way, it's kind of unleashed me in a way, because I was getting ready to wind down, and then suddenly in early 2020 I got these major companies like over here Beauty Bay or Anthropology, the clothing store, suddenly saying, look, everybody's dreaming, right, because of lockdown, the furloughs. Can you explain? Can you help? What's going on? And for me, in a way, that was like, oh my goodness, because for me, dreams are the door to the unconscious. They're the first step, the opening, the beginning. Because most people who are irrational or logical or discount spirituality, they're still interested in their dreams because they have them. My husband, for example, he's very logical and rational, but he's very interested in dream interpretation because he gets that. So what I found I was able to do through all these requests to go on radio, TV, or whatever, to talk about the meaning of the most common dreams, was actually to get people to think spiritually and to think beneath the material, beneath the surface. For example, if you dream you're falling, are you unsupported in your life? What is your unconscious, your intuition trying to tell you? And you get people thinking like that, that opens the door. And then you can start bringing in other concepts and other ones. And it's been incredible 2020, actually, the interest in spirituality. But I guess that tends to happen in times of crisis, that people do seek deeper meaning, because we're talking life and death here. So we're seeking deeper meaning.
I think there might be something else going on too. I noticed I started dreaming more when the pandemic set in, and I wasn't radically changing my lifestyle, since I'm not like a social gadfly anyway. But then I heard a story about it on the news. So they were asking some doctor about it. And she said, well, it's just because people are sleeping more, therefore they're dreaming more. But I think there's something more to it, which I think perhaps there's some kind of enlivenment of the field, of the force, if you will, taking place in the world. And that's kind of stirring things up for people more, and therefore they're dreaming more. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's your intuition, your internal therapist, your intuition, it's in the name, speaking to you and trying to help, because it's the part of you that wants to help and heal, because it's been so chaotic, filled with grief and loss last year. And what it's doing is through this awakening of dreaming, it's called the lockdown dream phenomenon. I've been asked so many times about it. And yes, there is a biological reason. People's sleeping patterns have altered. And of course, when that happens, if you have altered sleeping patterns, it's not that you're sleeping more, it's often the altered sleeping patterns. That's why you tend to dream more on holiday, because you're a bit jet lagged, and you get more REM, rapid eye movement sleep. Also, our mornings have slowed down. Instead of rushing off to work or your chores, you're at home. So you have longer for these images to come to your consciousness and recall them. There are biological rational reasons, but I think there's a deeply spiritual reason for I'm trying to say so much that I want to say,
right.
but
take your time.
Dreams, everybody dreams, right? Whatever your age, your race, your culture, your political belief.
Whatever your species. I mean, even dogs dream. You can see them kicking their legs and making little noises.
Absolutely. But dreams illustrate our shared humanity. And isn't that what we need to be reminded of right now? That we are all shared humanity. We all share this consciousness. And I think that's why dreams came to the fore. It's a powerful spiritual wake-up call. We are all linked. Whoever you are, you're going to dream. But also it's connecting you to that part of yourself which knows the bigger picture of your life, which has your best interests at heart. And I think in the modern world, we've disengaged from that unconscious, intuitive part of ourselves because our lives are so busy, so fast, so much materialism, so much passive consumption of what's on our phones and in the media, that we've switched off that inner guide. But the pandemic forced us all back in onto it, and it expressed itself through dreams. And of course, right now, dreams are never more at this, because Netflix, number one over here, is that paranormal thriller Behind Her Eyes, which I don't know if it's over there in the States, but it's absolutely huge over here, and it's all about lucid dreaming. Yeah, and it's just like people have just gone so much interest into it, what's going on, because it's a psychological thriller, but it takes lucid dreaming as the doorway going into your dream. And it's just, I'm sure it was a New York Times bestseller, so I'm sure it will, you know, it'll be over there on Netflix too. And so many people, it's a big talking point online. Behind Her Eyes.
Behind Her Eyes, Irene. She says a great series on Netflix. We have an erratic Netflix subscription. We unsubscribe and resubscribe.
It's very dark, Rick. So I wouldn't advise it but that's what I try to do, to remove the fear and woo out of the supernormal. If you want a really positive recent addition, is of course the Disney Pixar movie Soul.
I've heard that's great, yeah.
Heaven. And in 2019, I interviewed Dr. Lauren Carpenter, who is an IONS fellow, and he was co-founder of Pixar and a science director at Disney before he became an IONS fellow. So it did not surprise me at all that Disney was going to serve up the afterlife and a near-death experience for children in animation because of talking to Dr. Lauren Carpenter. And this is, the co-founder of Pixar. There's so many spiritual concepts actually in Disney movies, if you look at it.
Well, if you think about it, a lot of people are talking about some kind of spiritual awakening taking place in the world, on a global scale. And some of them have rather strange interpretations of how it's supposed to play out. But, people have been talking about this for a long time and anticipating it. And, maybe it's really kicking in now. And it's this, if anybody's ever been on a spiritual retreat, you probably experienced that there your dreams intensified incredibly, had all kinds of vivid dreams, profound things. And so the whole world is, to a certain extent, on a spiritual retreat now, if you want to call it that, or on a retreat. Whether you make it spiritual or not, I guess, is another matter. But there's definitely kind of an enlivenment taking place, I think, in global consciousness, and it's impacting everyone's psychologies, the way we function in our dreams. And I guess you might say that we're more open during our dreams, during sleep, than we are in the waking state generally. And so naturally, we might notice kind of more profound things happening during sleep than in the waking state. More likelihood.
Well, we're meeting ourselves in our dreams. We're understanding, and that's the goal of therapy, counseling, actually. The goal of a good therapist and counselor is to get you to understand yourself better. And I think that's the journey of our lives, is self-understanding. But we do that every night in our sleep. We're going into this symbolic world where everything's represented symbolically, and we're understanding aspects of our own personality. As I say, it's like that, the movie references will come in with me. That's what I'm like. I'm a real movie buff. Inception, of course. When everybody stops and stares at the dreamer, right?
Is that with Leonardo DiCaprio?
It is, of course. I also follow Leonardo DiCaprio as well as IONS. But, that's what I love, these big movies. They can awaken interest in these concepts in such a way. But what I hope, once the pandemic, we will go back to a sort of normal. I really hope that this love affair the world has had with their dreams won't go away, and people will keep recording their dreams, and look at their dreams as I do think it's extremely powerful. If anyone gets anything out of this interview, please don't think your dreams are nonsense and random. Write them down and look at what the dreams are trying to tell you. And don't just think one dream has a message. Often it's a series of dreams, a bit like Netflix series. You've got to look at them all and see what you're trying to tell yourself, your intuition is trying to tell you. But there is a category of dreams, also a very rare category, which I believe have psychic elements, because I get so much mail about it, or precognitive, and that's another area which suggests there's so much within us that we have no idea about.
And would you say there's a category of dreams that aren't really dreams? I mean, for me, the most profound experiences I've ever had in my life have been during sleep. Just counting on the fingers of one hand, and I've been meditating for 53 years, but some really profound things, but they didn't seem like dreams because they were just so significant and profound and intense and whatnot. Irene too, she's saying over there. So, and it's probably because of the innocence and the openness of the condition you're in when you're asleep. You can kind of be receptive to levels of cognition or experience that you are not so receptive to, even in a meditative state when you're awake.
Well, your conscious mind is so controlling, isn't it? And it won't allow the intuition to surface. But of course, when you sleep, your intuition reigns. It has free reign to express itself. Yes, and I call these rare kind of dreams night vision. Yeah. They're marked often, because most of our dreams, I would say about 99%, are symbolic. They're just as valuable because they're all really helpful messages, where your dreaming mind expresses itself through symbols and metaphors, but personal symbols and metaphors that you've got to learn the language of. I always say when you dream, it's like going to another country. And if you want to understand the culture, you need to understand the language. So you need to go on a crash course of understanding your personal symbols. Like everybody, if a cat, for example, if you dream of a cat, everybody has a different personal relationship with cats. Some people love them, some people not so much. So you've got to interpret dreams not so much from the universal interpretation, but from your personal one. And that's where often a lot of people fall down. They think, oh, I dreamt of this and it's going to mean X, Y, and Z. But also, just a little bit more before we go into the rare kind of dreams, the symbolic dreams also often tend to have a lot of fear in them. And people say, well, why is that? And that's because the dreaming mind wants to get its message across. And sometimes being gentle and giving you nice dreams on a holiday in Hawaii, it is not enough. Sadly, it's like being cruel to be kind. Sometimes nightmares and fear will come in. For example, if you're being chased in your dream, what are you running away from? What aspect of yourself do you need to turn around and deal with? And all that. And also, if you have a dream of death, a lot of people have dreams of death. And this is where the symbolic interpretation is so important. If you dream of someone dying and it does not mean to say they're going to die. You've got to look at the symbolism. Death is an ending, but a new beginning. So perhaps your relationship with that person is going through a transformation. But to go back to what you were talking about, night vision, which I believe is a small category, there is a difference. Symbolic dreams tend to be a bit like a music video, a lot of shifting images, doesn't really make sense. But night vision, it tends to have a beginning, a middle, end, feel very vivid and realistic. And I think that's like a door to somewhere. If you believe in the spirit, the afterlife, the unseen realm, it's a door that you're going to there. And I have had a few of these night visions in my life. And my goodness, they typically tend to be when I meet departed loved ones and I have a very vivid, realistic conversation with them. And when I wake up, it's like I have talked to them. It felt so, so real. And I did a lot of research into this, and I actually found that the research shows that in over 90% of cases, people who dream of departed loved ones do recover better with the grief. It's a very healing thing to happen as well. But I call them afterlife signs, afterlife visitations, and I think these experiences should be studied. I just,
tempted to tell you some of my night visions, but I don't want to talk about me too much.
Oh no, please do. No, please do. That's. I'd love to hear. Or tell me, right. Please.
Well, I'll start with the most profound one, and we'll see if I get into any of the others. But the most profound one, I was asleep. My body was, and I was ushered into a room, and I was asked to lie down on my stomach on a pallet of some sort and hang on to a couple of handles at shoulder height, and some being came in with a trident or a spear and started stabbing up and down my spine, stabbing, and it was the most excruciating, intense thing I'd ever experienced. And I'm summarizing here. And when I woke up from it, I woke up kind of in a sweat, but feeling, as I gained ordinary consciousness, the greatest bliss and sense of liberation I had ever felt, as if I'd been bound by steel bands for all of eternity and they'd been broken. And I just walked around in a state of awe for several days because I felt so transformed by that. And then I later discovered, just a few years ago, that this was back in 1980, this happened. I later discovered that Tibetan Buddhism or something has a practice where you're supposed to imagine Lord Shiva stabbing your chakras with his trident. And I think maybe somebody had that experience that I had and then tried to reverse engineer it into a practice. So that was one of them.
Incredible.
It was like if I've had any significant awakening in my life, that was the biggest one.
Did you know about this ceremony before this practice? You didn't.
I just heard about that. The dream happened in 1980 or so, and I just heard about this thing a couple of years ago. There was some such tradition.
I mean, that is such an incredible scenario to just, come out of nowhere. And the fact that you felt bliss on awakening, but
utterly transformed,
But it's basically the darkness before the dawn. It's the pain before birth.
It's a huge release.
Yes. It's about, and sometimes, as I always say in my books, you don't go to heaven, you grow to heaven. Growth hurts. And the only way to grow is out of your comfort zone.
I'll tell you another one quickly. And so the experience was just complete unboundedness, just unbounded awareness. And then gradually a thought started coming, and I started thinking, holy mackerel, I am having one heck of a meditation. I don't even remember starting to meditate. Oh, this is beautiful. And then I kind of experienced, I was sitting in lotus, and I became aware of my body. I was sitting up in lotus having this meditation, this unbounded awareness. And then, again, summarizing, I realized I'm fast asleep. I'm lying on the bed. This whole thing was happening just sort of on some...
So you became lucid, yeah. So you knew you were dreaming. That's lucid dream. You knew you were dreaming when you're dreaming. That's a wonderful skill that you can learn. Have you practiced lucid dreaming techniques?
No, I haven't ever practiced. It just comes or it doesn't, and...
Wouldn't you want to?
Yeah.
Though? Wouldn't you want to wake up in that dreamland state? You can role play. You can be anywhere. You can go up to space. You can fly. You can visit every country.
Well, I remember when I read the Carlos Castaneda books, Don Juan told them to try to see your hands in your dreams. Yeah, and so then, so I thought, all right, I'm going to try to do that. And eventually I actually, I'm dreaming. Okay, I want to see my hands. Yep, did it. And then after that, I just didn't keep, messing with it.
Oh, I mean, with me, that's my next big journey, lucid dreaming, because I've written so many dream dictionaries and encyclopedias now, and that's where I want to go now. And I'm learning techniques and potentially writing another book about it, actually, because there's so much interest in it. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you become lucid in your dream? Because actually, we do need it at the moment, because our waking life is not great at the moment for a lot of people. So let's go and explore and have fun in our dreams. So many of us limit ourselves in our dreams. We have these dreams, either they're boring or they're not very pleasant or whatever, but actually you can make your dream life wildly exciting.
Oh yeah.
You can role play, you can be or do anyone and anything. And I'm telling you, when people are able to control their dreams, become lucid in their dreams, the confidence boost it gives you. I've had 1 or 2 times in my life, maybe 3, where I have been aware that I'm dreaming and I've controlled the dream. I can tell you the next morning, I'm just flying, literally, the world, I feel I can do anything. And often it's before something amazing happened in my waking life. Because what we don't realize also is our dreams are a commentary on our waking life.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a continuation. And if you want your dreams to be more exciting, if you want creative ideas for the next novel or your next project to come in your dreams, as many great geniuses have actually had inspiration from their dreams, the plot of Frankenstein, for example, was a dream.
I read that section of your book. Paul McCartney and all kinds of other people have had.
Yes.
He dreamed the song yesterday, and all kinds of
Yes.
stuff.
I mean, Christopher Nolan, the director, he's a very much of a lucid dreamer. But what I'm saying, if you want to have more interesting creative dreams, it starts in your waking life. Become more mindful, become more curious in your waking life. A lot of us go through life with our blinkers on in a kind of like a routine. If you could actually treat each day as the precious gift it is, full of wonder and awe, that's not always easy because life can be tough. But if you can become more curious about everything in your waking life, that's going to have a knock-on effect on your dreaming. And there are certain techniques you can do during the day to increase the likelihood of becoming lucid in your dream. One of them is on the hour or every 2 hours saying, am I awake? Am I asleep? Like right now, maybe I'm dreaming I'm having this conversation with you, Rick, and but no, I'm awake. That hurts. So keep asking you that, because the thing is that what you do in your waking life will somehow carry over in the dream, and eventually you'll be in a dream and you'll be asking yourself, am I awake or am I asleep? And then when you know you're asleep, you can do anything. It's amazing.
Yeah. Dreaming is considered both, I think, by moderns and by ancients as one of three ordinary states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and sleeping, right? And in the Vedic tradition, they define a state which they call fourth, which they call turiya. Turiya means fourth. And the idea is that if pure consciousness is developed, well, if one becomes aware of the field of pure consciousness, which is one's own essential nature, to a sufficient degree such that it's no longer overshadowed by anything, it becomes a continuum throughout the other three states: waking, dreaming, and sleeping. So that's an interesting consideration. It's like the movie screen, it's always there no matter how the movies change. And so it's really, we could say, almost a fifth state of consciousness, where the fourth state becomes a permanent feature of life throughout the other three, 24/7.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Just interesting to throw in there.
Fascinating. No,
yeah, I mean, I have friends who say they haven't slept in decades. Although they've slept, they snore, they sleep, but pure consciousness remains fully illuminated throughout the 24-hour period, including deep sleep.
Well, that's true for all of us, but for some reason we don't recall.
Right, it's there. It just gets blotted out,
Yeah.
But it can be enlivened to the extent that it can no longer be blotted out or overshadowed by the depth of sleep.
Okay. But I do think that everybody, when they're asleep, their consciousness is going places. And I find it very interesting, actually, people who write to me and say, I don't recall my dreams. I don't remember. I don't recall. And I think there's a whole psychology there about what's going on, about why is it that you don't want to understand yourself at that deep level.
Don't want to, or is it just that people are kind of dulled out and, there's not enough clarity to remember the dreams?
Well, that's why so many more people are dreaming right now, because life has got a bit simpler, especially if you're on a furlough or at home. I mean, when life is in full swing, there's too much stress. Immediately when you wake up, that's life, your unconscious is too gentle. It can't compete. So sometimes it's stress and being way too busy. Or if you're someone who has a really, really active waking life, that's fulfilling you. Maybe, when you sleep, you just do want to switch off. I mean, there is a psychology behind it. Or you're a very rational and logical person who doesn't really feel comfortable with talking about what is irrational, who doesn't really want to suspend disbelief. So there's all sorts of reasons for it, not having dream recall. But I love working with people who say they don't remember their dreams, because usually after a week or two with me working with them or setting them exercises, they dream.
You know what happens to me sometimes, not all the time, but is maybe once a year this happens to me. I'll suddenly remember a dream that I had 30 or 40 years ago. Yes. And I hadn't remembered it then, but all of a sudden, boom, it comes to mind. I think, oh yeah, that dream, isn't that interesting? And then I go on with my day, but it just comes up.
Yeah, what's the lesson there? What's your dreaming mind? What's your intuitions trying to tell you something? As I say, it's your internal therapist and much cheaper than a real one. And we've all got this resource, and I wish we would all connect with it more and fall in love with our dreams. I hope we continue this love affair with our dreams that has happened in 2020. Dreams are huge at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're blessed. I mean, I look forward to going to sleep every night because not only is sleep blissful in its nature, but it's entertaining. Yeah, I'll wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or something, and I'll just chuckle about what I've been dreaming, and then
because there's no limits in dreams. You can actually, that in waking life we have restraints, we have norms of society or whatever, but in dreams there are no limits. And other people are frightened about that, but it wasn't the Dalai Lama, correct me if I'm wrong, who said that the best meditation is sleep? I'm sure he said that. And what happens when you sleep? You dream. So but yeah.
Somehow that triggered the Hamlet soliloquy there. Or,
which one?
To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind.
Yes.
And then to sleep, to dream. There's the rub. What dreams may come to, yada, yada.
Yeah, dreams can fuel our waking life. They can. As I say, they can help you understand yourself better. You can role play scenarios. So, you can actually face the worst case scenario in your sleep. For example, there are things many of us fear, like being attacked or dying or being lost or unprepared, the classic thing of being late for exam. And what your dreaming mind does, it takes you to that worst place scenario. And there's in the self-help movement, you've got to imagine the worst case. Most of us won't allow us to imagine that, especially if you're a perfectionist or successful person. You won't allow yourself to be that unprepared or to walk around nude in public.
I've had that one.
People forget. But you're taking your dreaming mind takes you there. So the worst thing has possibly happened. You have exposed yourself in public. You have forgotten your lines on stage. You have messed every single thing up. And it's okay because you've still woken up the next morning. It's a memory. It's gone. It's in the past. You've been there. You've done that. You've got it out of your system.
Another one that I had for years that a lot of people say they have is you're in high school or something and in the dream, and you suddenly realize there was some class that you were supposed to have been attending and you'd totally forgotten about it. Now it's the end of the year and you've forgotten it. Now you're going to flunk this class because you forgot to go to it. Did you ever have that one?
Oh, yeah. Well, school-themed dreams are among the top 5 most common, actually. There's, a certain, and the reason is in school, it's when we are forming. It's such a formative time in our life, like it or loathe it. It's when we meet people or get influences that create our personality. It's the school that forms and most of our lives actually are spent working out issues that we had at school or in our childhood, trying to really understand what we think or not what others do. So that's why we have school-themed dreams. And being late for an exam shows testing situations and not feeling you're up to it. A lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome or whatever and think, am I up for it? And your dreaming mind is just expressing all this for you so you cathartically can get it out of your system.
Yeah. Another one I've had a lot from over the years is I'm swimming underwater, and that's nice, but I can breathe. And I think to myself, wow, I'm underwater, but I can breathe. Isn't that interesting?
That's a beautiful dream. Water, of course, is a universal symbol of emotion. And a lot of people actually, they're underwater, but they're drowning.
Yeah, I don't get
the fact
that
you can breathe suggests that your emotions, emotional management is an important part of life. You are managing it. You're okay. You're not being submerged by emotions. You are navigating them. I'd be more worried about that dream if you were drowning and couldn't breathe. But that's a beautiful dream, showing the sea of emotions you're swimming through, your own emotions and other people's, and you're understanding it. You're being a natural psychologist. That's what that dream would express to me.
For some reason, I'm into telling you all my dreams now. I guess this is the time to do it.
Well, everybody does. It's great. I've done so much radio and TV recently, and I'm actually started a podcast with a Sky presenter called Alex Morgan. Actually, I'll talk about that. And we've got some over here in the UK. It's not US celebrities, but UK celebrities who are coming on, and it's a bit like an interview, but then they share a dream, and then they wheel me on as the dream catcher, and I and then it gets really deep, really deep. We had a politician talking about being in an opera and not understanding the words, what that's so deep. And you can actually, because people will reveal, because the thing is with celebrities, they have this mask on, but then they think it's okay to share a funny dream about being nude or their ex chasing them. You can go right in with the psychology there, but you can do it in a really safe way. And it's doing really well, actually. It's called In Your Dreams, where it's kind of an interview, but we go deep with a dream. And I think what a wonderful development. If this would never have happened 5, 10, 15 years ago, especially here in the UK, which does tend to be quite cynical. And here we are in mainstream talking about dreams and taking them seriously. I mean, I just feel my work is done. I'm so pleased, because what we're doing there is spirituality. It's understanding ourselves from the inside out.
Yeah. Here's another one that's kind of, here's one where some egotism comes into the dream. I'll have a dream where I'm levitating or flying or something like that, and I think that's cool. But at the same time, I think, oh, is anybody watching? Is anybody seeing that I can do this?
Well, that's good, because dreams are a hall of mirrors. Most of them are a hall of mirrors. You're dreaming yourself, and levitating. You don't take yourself too seriously. You're rising above the situation. And also, you've done so many of these amazing interviews, by the way. I'm so glad. And I'm actually really grateful to Tim Freak.
Yes.
I always laugh when I say that name.
Yeah. That's where I first discovered you, was listening to his podcast. And because I listen to it regularly.
He's great, isn't he? So thank you, Tim, for connecting me. And I'm going to recommend it everywhere now, this podcast. But you've interviewed so many people that in a way you must get a sense now. I know what this person's going to say before they do. But do you feel that you're at that point now? I mean, what is it, 600 interviews?
Nearly.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like a sponge. You've taken it all on board. And there's a point now when you think, is there anything new that I'm going to hear? And I think that's what that dream's about.
Huh. Well, I never get bored. Everything seems new and fresh, and each new guest is like opening a Christmas present or something, and you don't know what you're going to get. And I really enjoy, each week preparing for the guest for a week and listening to their stuff and reading their books. And it's certainly they're repeating themes, and we actually have a categorical index on Batgap where we cluster people into categories, so you can see all the.
Oh gosh, what were you going to put me in?
I don't know.
That shit crazy. Is that?
Yeah, we'll start a special category for you. But I don't know. I think it's. I love it. It's kind of like everything in my life led up to doing this.
Well, it's the best job in the world.
Yeah,
really,
somebody else said that to me just the other day. It was a brain surgeon in Dubai or someplace said, "Oh, you got the best job in the world."
Well, it is. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because you never know what you're going to stumble across.
Yeah.
And all these people, and it's a wonderful platform. And I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you as well.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because it makes accessible, and gathers together names that you maybe wouldn't find out otherwise.
That's part of our mission, actually, is not just to interview well-known people, but to interview people like who are just leading ordinary lives, but have had some significant spiritual awakening. And that was part of the initial motivation for starting this, is that I was talking to friends around town, and some of them were having spiritual awakenings, and then other friends didn't believe it because they just seemed like ordinary people. And so, how could they have a spiritual awakening? They're not floating 2 feet off the ground. So I just wanted to kind of showcase such people so people would realize that it's possible for me too. If it can happen to Joe Schmo over here, I could do it.
I'm sorry, I have this habit of talking too much. So
Me too. Irene flashes a sign to me during interviews, usually every time. You're talking too much.
No, it's great, but is that Irene? No, but what was I going to say? Maybe forget now. Okay, yes, what I loved about this, and I was so excited to be asked, is that you put the emphasis on ordinary, because I have been invited onto certain podcasts or whatever, and I've actually sometimes declined because they build the person like this extraordinary awakened soul, and I can't go there. Maybe I do suffer from imposter syndrome. I consider myself very ordinary. I have my moments of spiritual awakening and clarity like everybody else, but I consider myself very ordinary. I consider myself just simply lucky that I've been in the right place and the right time, and opportunities have come my way. And I'm very curious about the spiritual journey because I was born into it. But I don't like being presented on a platform as some kind of like, oh, she's got angels jumping out of her shoulders or whatever. Or I can't do that. I don't bless my readers. I know I have seen people in this movement blessing people. And this is, as I say at the beginning, where I am right now. Is I'm getting concerned about all that, because especially online now we have so many light workers courses. I have people writing to me, I've just done a certified angel course, and I think, who certified it? Is there what certification? The certification I'm into, and that's why I collaborate with IONS, is scientific endorsement, and certainly mediumship. I've done a lot of study of mediumship, people who, because it was what I was born into, a family of spiritualists, and spiritualists believe you can communicate to the other side. And I can't do it myself. I connect with departed loved ones in dreams and through my feelings and my heart, but I wouldn't say I see dead people in the sense most people think of mediums like the Whoopi Goldberg kind of representation from a ghost. So I've studied it.
I interviewed the guy who got the Oscar for the screenplay for that movie. What's his name? Bruce Joel Rubin.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, he's a real spiritual guy. We stay in touch. He sends out a nice little Christmas email every year, and with his family news, and we always chat a bit. Anyway, I'm sidetracking you. Sorry.
Sorry, no, but that is so interesting. But basically with mediumship, as I say, because a lot of my books are about afterlife experiences or encounters, up until a few years ago, I would avoid mention of mediums because I think the opportunity for fraud is too strong. However, I realized that so many people do get comfort from visiting mediums, so I explored that scientifically as well and went around the country actually to try and find an honest medium. Someone who was doing it from their heart, not their ego in their pockets. And there are people who do that. They're rare, but they are. And I came across the Windbridge Institute. I don't know if they're
Julie
affiliated with that. Yeah. She wrote the foreword to the book I wrote about my search to try and find an honest medium. I love what she's doing and having a scientific testing, using all the scientific protocols. And on her website, she lists mediums who have been tested and passed that, and have a code of ethics. Don't charge,
arm and a leg, right?
Yeah. I think for a mediumship or a psychic, you should pay no more than you do for a good haircut.
That's good.
And, you shouldn't. And if there's any celebrity hype around it, steer clear, because this is about creating a spiritual superstar, not the real deal, in my humble opinion. And as I always say, my opinion could be wrong. There's a difference between opinion and a fact. But that was an interesting voyage that I went on looking at mediumship. It was I do think there are some honest mediums out there, people who genuinely seem to connect with something. What's going on, whether it's telepathy, but even that's worth studying, isn't it? That's fascinating that someone can actually read someone else's thoughts. I
just want to comment on a couple of things you said. Firstly, for some reason, when I hear the word light worker, it makes me feel mildly uncomfortable. There's something pretentious about it, or holier than thou, And I'm a light worker, and what that makes you like chopped liver or something like that.
Well, do you know what I found? I think that there are more light workers now than there are actually people seeking that light, because there's so many of them, and it's not enough to just be spiritually awakened. You've got to be a light worker, and you heal, and you have usually there's a certified course and a workshop, in pre-COVID times, and it's quite frankly ridiculous. A lot of it, and almost, funny if vulnerable people were not being exploited. And actually, my latest episode of my podcast, I talked to, I think I emailed you about this, Rick, Christopher Johnson, who was in the Netflix documentary Holy Hell.
Oh yeah, and I emailed you back about this Association for Spiritual Integrity that I helped.
I've mentioned.
Yeah.
I'm so glad because it was after I interviewed him. I had an hour-long interview, and the interview's going up
Well,
around
I'll have to
now.
listen to it.
And in my introduction, I actually mentioned you and what synchronicity, because I didn't know about that organization. So I list the website and I'll put it in the show notes for people who are concerned. And it was a riveting interview. He talked about, he was 18-year-old and how he got sucked into this cult, and what was going on, the dynamic between this guru. It's actually, if have you watched Holy
No.
Hell? Oh,
Is that
well,
on
it's about the Buddha.
Netflix, you say?
Netflix,
Oh,
yeah,
I'll
it was a
check it
very
out.
acclaimed documentary.
I've heard of it.
It's about the Buddha Field cult.
Oh, yes, I heard of it.
Yeah, yes, it's very
I think B.
and
Schofield did a whole article about it.
absolutely fascinating. A Will Allen film. I do highly recommend it because it's a warning
Yeah.
of how easy it is to get your whole life given over to a cult. And Christopher Johnson plays a leading part in that. He was one of the guru's favorites. And he talks about how he was sucked into it and how he escaped. And I'm blessed for that interview. It was actually, again, through someone who Tim Freak knows, Richard Cox, who kindly connected me because he was hearing me talking on my podcast about, look, why are you following all these people? Have you checked their credentials? I was talking a lot about that. And so I got this interview, and, it's really, really helpful interview. I would love to put him in touch with you,
Yeah,
actually.
sure.
He has a Holy Hell Facebook page that for people who have been sucked into cults or whatever. And it's so relevant right now because the theme of being fed lies or untruths has gone mainstream.
Yeah, it really
now
has.
because of media.
Yeah. Let's dwell on this topic just for a few more minutes because it's important, and then we'll switch over to angels. But I think that, discernment, discrimination, and ethics are critical components on the spiritual path. And if one is deficient in any of those, you can be meditating for decades and just go way off the rails, and get yourself totally stuck and deluded. So you can't just sort of do a spiritual practice or this or that or follow a teacher and relax in all those important areas and expect to just cruise along. They're all.
But it's so easy, Rick, to get caught up in it, because I know when I started and I got my first Sunday Times top 10, this was nearly 20 years ago, I suddenly get deluged with mail of people who you've changed my life, whatever. It's I'm going to be honest, it's intoxicating.
Yeah, you feel. Oh, I get that too. I mean, people tell me that they were contemplating suicide, and then they listen to Bad Gap, and
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm sure that is the case. But it's like, because then you are in a position of responsibility, because you can either take it and I can see why people would love that and take it further, because then when the media started to come in, the media plays a part as well. My first feature in a newspaper, it was a lovely feature, and of course you have no control how the journalists do it, but when it came out, it was a national newspaper, world's greatest psychic. That's what they called me.
But you're not even a psychic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I'm not, but I'd written a book about astrology where I'd given psychological profiles for each day of the year based on simple astrology or whatever. And a lot of people were saying the predictions I'd made were very accurate. But I know that I'm not psychic. I was just using common sense, popular psychology, and putting in a bit of, excitement with it. But at that point, I had a choice. I could have gone that path, the celebrity kind of psychic. Maybe I have the odd intuitive hit. Maybe I am intuitive. I think we all are. But it's a choice you have to make. So ever since then, I've said I'm an ordinary person who, like everybody else, has extraordinary experiences from time to time. And when I do, I celebrate those and I write about them and I want to hear about them. But I can understand how it happens. And especially as I'm a serial writer and I've worked with so many publishers are business. If they're going to publish a psychic or a healer or a medium, they want that psychic and healer medium out there with the tour and it's a business. So it's very difficult when and to go back to when you see this term light worker, somebody says they've had a vision of an angel or somebody says they can see auras or had a near-death experience, you know, you are then automatically people want to worship and follow, and there's something in human nature that wants that, and that concerns me a bit.
Well, you remember what Jesus said? He said, whatsoever all these things I do, these miraculous things, you shall do even greater things. And I think he was trying to tell people that, there's nothing really special about me that you don't potentially have as well. And, you need to develop it. And,
Absolutely. I believe we're all got it in us, but it's where you choose to put your focus. And also when you do focus on it, not to get obsessed with it and not to be results driven.
Yeah.
And to expect the unexpected when you do start developing your spirituality, and not think that spirituality is going to reveal itself in a very set, fixed way, like in the movies or whatever, how you think, or suddenly you're going to wake up and you see an angel, or suddenly you're going to wake up and you have a blinding premonition that saves your life. That's not how it works. It's much more subtle than that.
And if you're a teacher, then it's not only for the sake of your students that you have to sort of toe this ethical line and maintain humility and so on, because you can harm people if you don't, but it's also for your own sake, because the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and if it goes to your head, you're going to crash and burn eventually.
But it's as I say, there's this need within people, you're right, to want to follow and to be told what to do. And it is intoxicating if you're in a position of influence to fall into that and give people what they want, which is certainty. Like if somebody's grieving, this is what you need to do. If you fear death, here's what to think. It's very intoxicating to fall into that. But as I've said many times to people, I'm sure if there is an afterlife, when you go to the other side, you won't be asked how much you copied or followed anyone else. You'll be asked how much was Teresa. Not much. How did Teresa be inspired by the works of Mother Teresa or Gandhi or all sorts of iconic spiritual figures? How true were you to who you are? That's what I believe.
It's interesting that some of my most popular interviews have been channelers and healers.
Oh yes, everybody wants that.
Right, it's because they're doing it for you, I mean, I don't have to do anything. I'm going to get this wisdom from this person. I'm going to get healed by this person, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. It's much easier to see someone and worship someone like that. And also it's sensational, it's exciting. This person's seen heaven. This person knows what death's like. This person can talk to arcane. I mean, that's what I talk about in my angel thing, to go on about that. There's apparently, according to angel experts, there's this whole hierarchy. I mean, it seems to be very much like they've organized the other side like LinkedIn. It's like, it seems like there's this whole hierarchy of ascended masters and all these things that happen on the other side. And I'm thinking, this is madness.
Well, let's switch to the whole angel talk here, because okay. we spent an hour talking about a lot of stuff, and but let's dedicate the rest of this interview mostly to talking about angels. So angels, you just alluded to, somehow live on the other side, or they live in some dimension that is not our ordinary earthly perception. Let me give a quick definition of what I think angels are, and you tell me how that jibes with what you understand, and then please elaborate to a great extent. But my sense, intuitive and also just intellectual from everything I've studied, is that there are many dimensions to the universe, and all beings have a certain range of perception, operate within a certain range, and human beings have the capability to, ordinarily they operate within a fairly narrow band, but they have the capability to expand their range of perception to incorporate subtler realms in which forms of life reside, subtle beings, angels, and all kinds of other. There's a whole menagerie of different types of beings that are outlined in various traditional scriptures. And there is a hierarchy, perhaps, in the sense that some of them have much greater power and are a higher level of evolution, have much broader sphere of influence, and some of them might be, very specific and localized, either attending to certain individual people or plants or trees or whatever. That might be little angel devas or whatever, and then great big galactic, gods or devas. And human beings it wouldn't be practical for ordinary human life to be aware of this stuff all the time, but some people like David Spangler and others are born with a natural capacity to experience this stuff, and others it may develop later on in life. And I'll say one more thing and then shut up. But one thing that's fascinating here is that, imagine if extraterrestrials landed on the White House lawn or maybe the courtyard of Buckingham Palace. It would be a huge news story. Wow, this other kinds of life that we never even realized existed, and here they are, we see them. So it's a bit ironic that we're completely surrounded by forms of life that we don't even imagine exist and yet do, and they may or may not be aware of us. Many of them are, I think, and they're all among us. And yet most of us are completely oblivious to that fact. And that's fascinating. All right, I've said enough. You go ahead.
I love your interpretation about angels, and for me, whatever people think about angels is right for them. For me personally, I've come to the belief that I don't know these unseen realms. I'm sure they exist, but I have no personal proof. I'm sure there are people who say they can travel to these realms, but that's their experience. That's about them.
Well, the realms are right here. You don't have to travel to them. All those subtle dimensions are right here and can be perceived in the midst of riding on a bus or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I say. The angels around there are within. And that's my expansive interpretation about angels. And what I love about angels is that they exist in every religion, even Buddhism. We have kind of winged figures, but they can also exist outside of religion. Nobody went to war about angels. They are, totally universal, and they're a wonderful way to draw people into spirituality. You can believe in angels without being religious. I love that aspect. But increasingly, from all the research I've done, and I've written probably about 15 angel books now. This will be my 16th.
You've written about 100 books, haven't you?
I have. I told you. What did you call me? You called me the
serial scripter or something. You must have really good time management skills to write all these books.
It's my passion in life. It's what I love to do. But a lot of these books are a collection of other people's stories, people who write to me, ordinary people who've had angelic encounters. And then I collate them, I edit them, and I talk about them, bringing in some of my academic insight. As I said, I was blessed to have study at Cambridge, to study religion and all that. So I kind of bring all that into it, but now I'm bringing in the science. But where I am at right now, I think angels are within, as you say. They're the mysterious, the unexplained, the intuition, and basically anything that makes you feel sublime, that makes you kinder, that makes you more compassionate, that makes you more loving. This is where I have come to term angels.
Okay, let's pick that apart a little bit. So angels are within. Please define within. And then the second part is anything that makes you kinder and this and that. Well, you can get kinder just watching a good movie about kind people or something, or reading a biography of Mother Teresa.
Exactly. Everything that is an angel sign, your angel sign, the biography of Mother Teresa.
Why would angels have anything to do with that? It's just an uplifting book.
I know, but angels have inspired it. Anything, I don't know, but that's what I've come to believe. I believe that angels exist within us, and they are the force for goodness and compassion in the world. And at the end of the day, that force for goodness, love, and compassion is all that truly matters. It's what gives us deeper meaning. It's what people on their deathbed, I've had the privilege to sit with people when they were dying, when I worked in a hospice. They talk of love, they talk about kindness, they talk about their angels. That's the way that I feel angels express themselves. I'm not interested in angelology or giving angel very human terms and names, or saying that just because I've had a dream and in that dream I went to a realm and I saw all these angel beings reading books, that is real. I don't know. All I know is that at the end of the day, what gives our life deeper meaning is this spiritual understanding, this connection to the force within us. And that's where it's got very, very simple with me, actually. My life, really, it's got so simple. I've realized that all these years I've overcomplicated it with all this terminology, with all these groups, with all these systems, with all these people who have this set way of doing it. It's very, very simple. I think spirituality can be summed up with 2 words: be kind.
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
it. Let's just end the conversation. That's it. Just be kind, because through doing that, we make the world a better place. We also make ourselves feel better. And there's scientific research, psychological research to show that kindness is this force. You know, kindness can make you lead a beautiful life.
Yeah, it's very important. And for so many reasons. Because not only, it's like what I said earlier about teachers, it's kindness is important not only for the people you influence, but because there's an immediate feedback loop. And if you are unkind, you coarsen and degrade and undermine your own.
So
Your
true.
own
But the most
makeup.
important starting point for that is kindness to the self. That's got to be, but most people understand being kind to others. And I've met so many spiritual people who are endlessly kind for other people, helping, giving, but still unhappy. And of course, it's that be kind is the proviso. Be kind to yourself and others. You know, that's the most important thing. And I think it is the hardest thing for people to learn. A lot of my books actually have become very simple with the journey, the return to love, the return to being for yourself what you're looking for in others. Because we're seeking in others, in relationships, in career, in spiritual teachings, feeling good about ourselves. But we've got to do that for ourselves. That's the starting point. Self-love. Every religious system encourages self-care, but none of them really tell us how to do it. And I think people, especially if you've had a traumatic childhood, as a lot of people drawn to spirituality are, because they, you know, the people who should care for them didn't. So they seek a deeper meaning and an understanding why. You need to learn the basics of self-love, that return to love. It's the hardest thing to do. It really is. It takes a lifetime. But once you get to that point, not narcissism, I'm not talking about that. There's so much talk about narcissism, and that's a completely different category. But just nurturing yourself, body, mind, and soul. That's the starting point. Because when you do that, I believe you naturally attract people into your life who treat you the way you treat yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way I would interpret self-love, I had a big epiphany when I was 18, and I had been, taking full advantage of everything the late 60s had to offer. And I kind of realized...
But experience is important too. I mean, we need to encounter our shadow, and, we learn through that.
Yeah,
we do learn.
But I had gotten pretty messed up, and I had this realization that if I continue on like this, I'm going to really damage this body, this nervous system, and this is my vehicle for living life. So I really better clean up my act. And then I changed a lot of things, stopped taking drugs, learned to meditate and everything. But I guess that you could think of that as self-love, taking care of this precious gift of human nervous system, not, providing it with adequate sleep and nutrition and, things that make it more healthy, make it function better, like you would take care of an expensive automobile that you want to kind of keep in tune. Yeah.
Absolutely. People take better care of their cars than themselves, but it's a switch that's got to go on. And what triggers that? Because until someone's ready to make that decision to take care of themselves, nothing other people say or do is going to help it. It has to be, and that's what I feel is the divine within. Some switch has to go on that you actually get it. And, it is heartbreaking when you tell people, well, to do the right thing or to take care of themselves, but they're not there yet. It seems that their soul has to go through another journey, another tough love experience. And it's typically during times of crisis, bereavement, loss, grief. They are catalysts for this. Well, I've reached rock bottom now, so I've got to do something different than what I've done before. Yeah. And that switch is a personal one. It can't really be facilitated by someone else. And that's why, as we're talking about light workers and gurus, that's all great. But unless you're ready to take that step yourself, make that decision yourself, take responsibility for yourself, it's not going to help. Yeah.
I'm going to switch back to what we were talking about a minute ago. You were saying that angels are kind of within, and I was reminded of Lincoln's phrase, the better angels of our nature, which I believe he said during his inaugural address. And so you're kind of defining angels there as like positive attributes within our personality. But I just want to suggest, and perhaps you also believe this, that angels also exist outside of us. For instance, one time I gave I did a panel discussion of a bunch of people who say they had subtle perception or celestial perception, and people were talking about the different experiences of subtle beings and all that they have. And one of the people didn't have much to say, and afterwards I asked why, and she said, "Well, they were in my face. They were saying, 'You realize you can't talk about this.'" And okay, I won't. So, and that person also told me that she sees angels or something, doesn't even know what they are really, but presumably guardian angels around people all the time, just routinely, as you and I would see people in a shopping mall. They just kind of cluster around and seem to be attending to people in some way.
Absolutely, yeah. Rick, there are people who say that they can see that. And I say, good for them if it makes you happy and it harms no one. However, the great majority of people, myself included,
and me,
don't see
right.
that.
I've had a few glimpses, but
so
not much.
Where does that leave us? Feeling like failures? I mean, spiritual failures, because obviously, if this person says they can see all these beings, why can't we?
Well,
and does that mean that we need to learn then what they do or whatever? And it sets up a cycle of dependency of that, these people are, they're on a higher spiritual level. And I'm very much about, equality in spirituality. And I don't actually think it's necessary, because I can see angels in a grain of sand, in the love of my pet, in the laughter of my children, or in a sunset or a sunrise. That's how I see them with my inner eyes when I close my eyes and I think of beautiful things. And I think that's much more of a powerful message than to go out there and say to people, well, there are these beings, you can't see them, but I can.
Yeah, no, I'm not coming from that angle.
Because I've been to course after course of spiritual. Honestly, in my teens, I was such an earnest spiritual seeker, and I really thought, I went to the College of Psychic Studies. I literally was a junkie for courses. I was shopping for heaven, as it were. And I actually found myself, because I was in these groups, and they can be very smug spiritual retreats or whatever. I'm going to say that. Very serious as well. Humor is often lacking, but it certainly was when I was doing it. And all these people were saying, well, I had this vision and whatever. And I was thinking, I've seen nothing, and I felt something was wrong with me. And then I'd go to the guru and they say, well, when you're ready, there appear. And that's great. But then I just feel that there are a lot of people like me who maybe have been on psychic development courses, have seen absolutely nothing, but feel they ought to, made it up. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's good not to compare oneself with others.
No.
I mean, I don't feel bad that I can't.
When you're young, you
Pardon?
do. I mean, when you're young,
you tend to more. But
because I'm much older now, so I realise the only person I should compare myself is the person I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And the only person I should aspire to be is the better person I can be tomorrow. But back then, it was very impressionable.
Right.
And I began to think, why are we all doing all these courses and spending hours meditating? I mean, who's got time for that anyway? Shouldn't life be lived? And I typically find it, no disrespect, Rick, but it's often men who meditate for hours.
Yeah.
And I just think, well,
I love it.
I know, but I'm sure Irene's doing it.
I do stuff the rest of the time, but, a couple times a day.
I know.
Yeah.
But 2 hours to be able to just switch off, and especially if you are busy and you've got dependents or whatever, to just take 2 hours out to go and, I've seen that happen a lot, in couples, that the man, where's he gone? Oh, he's meditating, and she's rushing around doing 101 things. So,
I think Irene appreciates getting me out of the room for an hour.
No, that's true. But if meditation's for you, as I say, I think if everybody has their own unique
When I
way.
meditate, she's saying it seems like it's mostly men who like to meditate, and I don't know if that's true, but
Probably not. I'm going to get
it's like
it's changed.
Irene doesn't resent the fact that I'm not like bugging her for 24/7.
By the way, he's quiet. He's not talking.
And then I vegetate.
Yeah, she says you meditate and I vegetate.
Anyway, I'm not criticizing that at all.
Yeah.
If it's somebody's path and it makes them feel good,
Saved my
and
life,
it makes them feel
and it
empowered,
continues to enhance it.
yeah. Yes, but I just think, I would never recommend, for example, in my books, go and meditate for 2 hours every day or whatever, because it's simply not practical.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
For a lot of,
I mean, it's just what I do. But anyway, to each his own.
Anyway,
and this whole
that's
thing
not
about
just-
comparing oneself with others, I mean, I can't play basketball like some famous star, or I can't write like you do, or, all kinds of things that I don't do, but I do what I do. And, if the world, we need, variety is the spice of life, and there are 8 billion of us, and we're each unique, and everybody has their contribution to make. So, we have to, it's called dharma you're probably aware of this word, that, that course of action, which for you is most appropriate and through which you can be most effective.
Absolutely. That's where I've come to at the moment. Dharma.
Yeah,
yes. That's where I've come to at the moment. And whatever works for you, as long as it harms no one, and it makes you feel good about yourself, absolutely, it's wonderful. But to return to the angels, as I said, I have a very expansive interpretation of angels now, and it does tend to be connecting to your better angels, which I think is what the world needs at the moment. The more of us activate, it's in our DNA. Being kind, having empathy is actually in our DNA. Cultures that take care of each other, societies that take care of each other tend to survive. So it's necessary for evolution. And I think increasingly in modern times, the empathy gene has switched off for whatever reason, and switching that back on again for me is igniting the aspiring angel within you, and bringing, and if you believe in unseen realms, bringing the angels closer to earth, because it's like a magnet. Empathy, compassion, love. If there are unseen beings out there, that draws them closer to you. That's how they speak to you.
Yeah. There's a saying in Sanskrit, which is the means collect around sattva, and sattva means purity. And by means, it just means that there are impulses of intelligence, we could call them angels, which kind of are involved in the way things happen in the world. They orchestrate things. And, if you are more like them, then they are able to align with you more. They're able to resonate with you more and be of greater assistance in the fulfillment of your desires, because your desires are more in tune with sort of divine intentions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So we're, we're not alone. They do exist within us, but they also, if we limit our...
But do you not think that what's within us is also without us? I mean, I've got to, that bliss is when there's that beautiful merging between the force, spiritual force within us with what is outside us, that it's all one, that there's this sense of interconnection. Because when I have spoken to people who've had peak experiences or interviewed them for my books or whatever, they talk about this interconnection, and also near-death experiences, people who say that they've died and gone to heaven. I spoke to Eben Alexander about it's this blissful understanding that it's all the same. And that's such a mind-blowing, mind-opening concept that is hard to explain in human terms. But for me, what's within and what's without is one.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And great sages like Ramana Maharshi and others have described this beautifully, that they're not just philosophizing about it. It's their living experience. They are the oneness. They are Brahman. They are the totality. And, then there's this little human body. I was just hearing a story last night from a Swami I take classes from named Swami Sarvapriyananda, and someone was saying to Ramakrishna, who lived back in the 1800s mostly, who had gone through a number of difficulties in his life, people giving him a hard time and various health things, and someone was saying, why is it that such a soul as you should have to suffer all these outrages? It's really not right. And he said, if you, I forget the exact wording, but if you think this little thing here is me, you're really not seeing the full picture. and he said the same thing when he was dying of cancer. People were saying, "Oh, you're suffering," and all that. He said, no, no, no. He says, "I am the universe. How could I suffer? I am the vastness." That you're just kind of identifying with this little, entity, this little physical form, but that's really not what I am.
That's a huge, expansive way to look at it.
That was his experience. I mean, he wasn't just philosophizing.
That's incredible. I mean, why bad things happen to wonderful, good people? Eternal question, isn't it? And I've just come to the point now when, I get so much mail about this, just to say, just keep asking why. Never stop asking why. Because in the asking of why, you activate your compassion and your empathy. Because imagine a world where we knew why everything happened. Like, we know why a woman screams in pain when she has a baby. We aren't that concerned, are we? We just think, okay, just imagine a world where we knew the reason for your friend having cancer or a child dying. Imagine if we knew. We would not be kind or compassionate. We'd be nonchalant. And that's not a world that I think I would want to live in. So I've come to that point because, these are questions that, have been asked since the beginning of time. Who is Teresa Chung to be able to answer them? Because I do get asked them a lot, and trying to come up with an answer for these. I'm sure you get asked them as well. Big questions like that. Like, what is life? Why are we here? Why do bad things happen to good people? There's a part of me that would just love to have a great answer, but I just say, let's just keep asking these questions, because the more we ask questions, the more we grow. Because I think when you know something, when something is known and certain, sorted, it's almost like stagnant, isn't it?
Yeah.
The growth stops.
Especially if you're adamant about it, or if you're insistent that it's got to be this way, then that's a problem. But aren't we living in a world now where it's so much like that, where it's black and white, where people are just like, it's my way or the highway? That's the way the world's come. I know the answers. This is what's happening. This is, we've lost this, ability to be open-minded about other opinions that are different from our own. Yeah.
And that's sad. That is really sad. So, yes, we're all dreaming more and we're awakening, but the sad part as well, as I've seen, as I'm sure you have in recent years, this closed-mindedness that's happening as well, where people have their fixed ideology and that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah, there's so many things going on. I mean, I think there's an increased polarity taking place in the world and in many people's psychologies. This thing about knowing things for certain. I mean, you and I believe certain things that we've been discussing today, and we believe that there's an afterlife, for instance. But we're not going to kill.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, of course.
Now that's
the scientific attitude.
I admit that. I could be wrong about everything. I have an opinion, and I could be wrong about everything I've said to you. And I'll find out on the other side when I.
And that's one of the principles of the scientific method. Hypotheses should be falsifiable in order to be a valid hypothesis.
That's why I love working with scientists, because I've often asked to them, especially ones like Dr. Beishaw, the IONS crowd, Dean, are you a believer? And they say to me, that's irrelevant. Yeah. They often say to me, that's irrelevant. The science matters. I'm a scientist first and a believer or a skeptic second. And I like that development.
Oprah was interviewing Eckhart Tolle, and she did this.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, that too. That's coming up. But she did this thing where she started little sentences and had him finish them, right? And so one of the sentences was, "I believe," and then he said, "Nothing in particular."
Yeah, I'm starting to say I don't know. And also I do change my mind, that opinions I had 10, 20 years ago. Of course, I'm a different person now. I've evolved, I've learned, I've changed my mind, and people find that very difficult. When I started out, I was collecting all these angel stories. Angels are real, they're these beings with wings and whatever. It does evolve and change. And I think, that's something that people who follow you, as we have in this world, if you become a public figure, struggle with. I say, well, actually, that's wrong. This is what I think now. And that's okay. It's okay to change your mind. But changing your mind seems to be considered, a crime these days.
Yeah, I was thinking of another Lincoln quote here. Someone accused him of changing his mind or something like that about something, and he spun it around and said, well, that's a good thing that I can change.
It
Yeah.
is a good thing. It is a good thing to be open-minded, because that's how the human race evolves, surely. If we all know all the answers, we don't know. All of us are guessing here.
And it doesn't mean
And
that we don't favor certain bodies of knowledge that we accumulate. I mean, we're pretty darn sure the Earth is not flat, although there are people who think it is. And
that documentary, The Flat Earth. I mean, I couldn't
is there?
believe it.
Where is that on Netflix also?
I
got to see that one.
I'm spending way too much time on Netflix. That's what you've identified on this. But yeah.
Yeah, and we know that people landed on the moon, but there are people who think we didn't. But so it's not like we have to be total wishy-washy, people who don't favor one perspective over another, but you just can't take it to the point of absolute, adamancy.
No, well, there are only two things we know: we're going to be born and we're going to die.
You know that.
Those are the absolute and taxes. But we do know those two things. That's all we really know. Everything else, why are we here? Why are we even alive?
And we know we're conscious, or we know that consciousness somehow is.
Are we? When you have a very realistic dream.
Could be, but then we're conscious in that dream. There's
what's happening? Where do we go? Everything in this life is a mystery. And if you have that attitude, I think that's a wonderfully exciting way to live. I have come to expect the unexpected all the time.
Yeah, I could make a joke now and ask you to talk about something really crazy that you have no idea what it is, because that would be unexpected. But anyway, I won't do that. So let's see.
Would you like to know about Harry and Meghan?
No, I don't care. I wish them well.
I said I'd be doing radio stations. It's about dreaming or spirituality, and then they hear my accent, especially overseas, and they want my opinion on Harry and Meghan. It's fun.
Yeah, I'd rather hear about the Beatles, but then you're not from Liverpool, so.
Oh, the Beatles, yes. How many Brits have been on Batgap? I know you have Tim.
Oh, quite a few others. That fellow I was listening to.
I'll form a Batgap society.
Yeah, we have a thing called BritBox over here that you can watch British. Irene watches it, but maybe I should call it Batbox. But who was that guy who was friends with Eckhart Tolle? He's written. Yeah, I've had Steve on. I was just listening to him.
Yes, Steve Taylor.
In fact, I want to email him because he mentioned something in your interview with him that I found fascinating, which was that he finds himself feeling blissful at funerals, and he thinks people would think that's strange. But I wanted to say, me too. And not so much funerals, but when both of my parents died, I felt tremendous sort of upwelling of bliss. And not that I was happy they died, and in my father's case, I didn't even know he had died. And I was just having this amazing day. I was thinking, wow, this is wonderful. I feel so good today. What's going on? And then later I found out he had died the night before. And I think it's somehow that we participate in their release. They're
But they also return to you in spirit, don't they? That they can always be with you in your memories, in your dreams, and in your heart. And it's a kind of a fuller, richer relationship in some ways, because when someone's in their physical form, it's limited by time and space.
Yeah.
And when someone dies, that relationship in spirit, and that's the wonderful thing when you have lost someone, that eventually you come to a point when you enter into this new relationship in spirit and realize how rich and full it is.
Yeah. And in the case of my parents, they both lived very difficult lives. My father had a lot of PTSD from World War II and alcoholism, and my mother, all sorts of psychological problems. But in any case, I felt like with both of them, they must have experienced quite a delightful transition, from what they had been experiencing to, boom, that release. And somehow I partook of that.
Well, if you've ever sat with people who've passed, it's quite, the peace. I mean, obviously not always, but when I, in my teens, I worked in a hospice, and that was very powerful experience, holding someone's hand. And but instinctively, when I was with them, you just sense that something, the spirit, when the spirit goes, it is a blissful release.
Did you ever hear what
and
Steve Jobs said just as he was dying?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. 3 times.
Oh, wow. 3 times. Yeah. He was such an intuitive man as well. He went, oh, wow. What was he seeing? What was he seeing? But you instinctively feel that the body becomes like a coat that they've taken off. That's what it is. It's no longer them. And that's why I'm not actually big on funerals in a way. Because I know that beautiful Mary Fife poem, I always love quoting, do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I'm the wind that blow. It's just so beautiful. Way of understanding death.
Yeah. In the Vedanta tradition, they're what they call koshas or sheaths. And the physical body is the outermost sheath. It's called the Annamaya kosha, which means food kosha because the body is made of food. And then there's the breath, the pranamaya kosha, the mind, the manomaya kosha, the intellect, and then the innermost one is the bliss sheath, the anandamaya kosha. And when the physical body dies, it's believed that all you're shedding is the outermost sheath, and that the other sheaths still exist and function on whatever realm you end up in.
These are beautiful representations, isn't it, of the same thing? How, every culture has, given beautiful interpretations of this release that Steve was talking about. I agree this, but, I don't want to glamorize death in any way. And I'm conscious when I have written afterlife books to not tonight, that death is this, great adventure you're going to. We're here on this earth for a very important reason, because this earth is almost a bit like school. We've got important things to learn, and you can have heaven on earth too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And people often say the afterlife is, you can experience it right now through what you say, what you do, what you feel. I believe actually that you create the kind of afterlife you will experience by what you're feeling, thinking, and doing. That we actually create through our lives. And that's why, the concept of, like, does a serial killer, go back to that theme, do they go to heaven? Do they have this blissful relief? They shouldn't, surely, if they've been horrible, they've killed lots of people. What happens to them in the afterlife? That's another question I get. And I think that in the afterlife, just as in this life, the learning continues. And I believe that the spirit of someone who has been evil will have to feel what their victims felt, or the people they hurt. So there's empathy.
Have you ever heard Danny and Brinkley's story? He's one of these well-known near-death experience people, and he had 4 NDEs, twice getting struck by lightning and 2 in heart surgeries. And he had been a sharpshooter in Vietnam, killing people. And what he experienced was a life review in each NDE in which he experienced the consequences of his actions from the perspective of the people whom they influenced and the families of those people and so on. He had to kind of go through everything they experienced as a result of having their loved one killed. And
what an awesome thought.
Yeah, so that was, and he doesn't, I mean, he's dedicated his life to helping people in hospice situations and things like that now, but, it's kind of interesting to hear him describe it, because it's not like a punishment, it's more like a learning.
It's growth. Yes. So that's I don't believe in hell, but it's the learning, I think, on the other side. But also, what an awesome thought, because near-death experiences classically talk about the life review, don't they? Watching your life again, typically in reverse. And I always think, well, do I really want to watch my life again? If I'm doing something if I'm doing something I'm not proud of, I'm going to have to see this again. That's often very powerful for me. If I do something that is not in line with, my values or my higher self or whatever, and I think, well, do I want to watch this again? And that's a really, you're going to have to watch it all again. You're going to live every interview again, Rick.
Well, that'll be okay. They've been fun. But even now, don't you have the experience I do that you often will relive or dwell upon something that happened many, many years ago, and you're kind of, particularly, negative things I've done that have hurt people, and I just sort of go through it, and I feel like I'm kind of processing it and reaching out for forgiveness to the person and things like that.
We're all human. We all have a shadow side, and why we do, I don't know, but we do. But I think in those cases, especially if you have hurt someone and you can't reach out to them or they don't want to communicate anymore, I think there is great value in sending them positive energy. That sending them the energy that you understand, that because a lot of people, they want to know how you made them feel, and I think a lot of people want to be seen and heard, and I think if they won't communicate with you, just sending them that healing energy, I think, can have a dramatic effect, not only on yourself, but also on them in an unseen way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I say that to anyone listening, if you're feuding with someone or there's animosity or you've hatred, I hate that term, but we have it all within us. Just try for 3 days to send them compassion, and it makes a radical difference. A radical difference. It's a big shift. It's a big shift, but you can do it.
Yeah, I heard a story on the radio the other day about this guy who, when he was 14, had killed another boy. And then he had spent many, many years in prison, even though he was 14 when he did it. And eventually the father of the boy he had killed had come to prison and had befriended him, or maybe he had written to the father, I don't know. But they have become like dear friends, and the guy who killed the other guy's son now works for an organization that he has established, that they're kind of helping people with forgiveness and helping, helping people who have been through experiences like that. So obviously,
I think forgiveness is a forgotten word these days. Actually, I think there's not enough emphasis in spirituality on. We talk about love and compassion and empathy. Forgiveness, I think, is something that's a little bit neglected in the spiritual repertoire. Forgiveness of ourselves as well as others.
Works both ways, I mean, that father of the boy, if he had just continued hating this kid all of his life, it would have been eating away at him.
You give over your power, don't you? You give over your power.
Instead, something beautiful came out of it. So, what haven't we covered? You've written so many books. Shall we talk about psychic cats?
Yes! Do you know, after I went on Russell Brand, and the most bonkers interview ever, actually, this was actually because up until Russell Brand, actually, which was a few years ago, I really hadn't done much media, because I do try and practice what I preach, and I very much feel that spiritual books are something that people find, that they don't need to be marketed. I really do believe
Probably
that.
Your publishers are bugging you to get out and promote more,
Yes. Or I should stop doing what I'm doing and go on a retreat, something, or go to the monastery or nunnery, wherever I wanted to go. But it was one of the first ones I did, really. And he mentioned psychic cats, and since then it's had a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah.
What it is, it's people basically, and it annoys me because Rupert Sheldrake wrote about the telepathic bond between human and dog.
Yeah.
He is not laughed at because he's a scientist. However, Teresa Chung, she writes about it. Let's have a good old laugh, but I suppose it played into the stereotype of a woman of a certain age who lives with cats
cat lady,
and thinks she's psychic. Right. But basically, it's a beautiful book. I had a cat when I was growing up that was my best friend. I had it for about nearly 20 years and died just before I went to Cambridge. And that beautiful cat was, I think, a fur angel. And and that inspired the book. And then people write to me about how their cats have sensed how they feel. I mean, cats are used in hospital settings as well as dogs. I mean, I have both 2 cats and 2 dogs at the moment, and it can work. There is an apartheid in our house, but it can work. I love them both. And I think actually you can tell a lot about a person the way they treat animals.
Yeah. We've had, Irene in particular, but I think I also experienced this with a couple of our cats, or even maybe dogs when they died, is some kind of afterlife message or communication or something from them.
Pets from Heaven, yes.
Was that one of your books, Pets from Heaven?
Right. No, I was asked to write it. I was signed to write it, but I changed it actually in the end after psychic. But no, I get a lot of messages from people because, actually, the relationship between a human and their pet can sometimes be one of the most important relationships in a person's life. And I think pet bereavement is a big neglected area, that, you know, these are their best friends sometimes. And people do have afterlife experiences involving their cat or their dog or their horse or their rabbit. And it's not to be laughed at, because love in any form is valid. I believe animals have souls. I believe that they have empathy. They're natural empaths. Dogs are natural empaths, you know, and when that goes from your life, you know, it's tough. And I think you can connect with pets on the other, you can connect to pets on the other side.
So. Have you had Rupert Sheldrake on your podcast?
I haven't actually, I must do, but you know, I did get annoyed that he wasn't he wasn't laughed at, you know.
Oh, he gets laughed at, believe me. A lot of people think he's a nutcase.
Does he? Well, anyone in this area does, you know, even the ion scientists, they get a lot of flack, don't they? But, you know, that's okay. That's okay. I get laughed at, but, you know, as I say, this year, not so much, Rick. It took a pandemic to unleash me, but now people are seeking out spiritual insight. I wouldn't say guidance. I don't think I guide. I just offer a perspective.
What are you saying? Irene's saying something.
Our dog Theo, he shows psychic abilities all the time.
Theo, yeah.
Is that your dog?
Irene's saying he shows psychic abilities. Like, yeah. Right. Like if we even think about going someplace, you know, taking a walk or something, we have to be really, really careful, because even thinking the thought, he's like, whoa, you know, his ears perk up. Maybe there's some kind of signals we're letting out or something. I don't know, but it's unconditional love as well, and that to me is an angel. So I think that pets can be angels. But that's your next guest, Theo. Yeah, Theo.
You're Theo for 2 hours. I bet you that would get more hits.
It probably would. I'd show you one of them, but she's fast asleep. Irene could pick. Maybe Irene should pick her up.
What kind of dog?
Oh, what is? Pick Luna up. What is Luna?
Oh, she's sleeping.
What can I see, please?
Yeah, here comes Theo. Yeah, you can hold Theo over here. Don't actually give him to me. All right.
I think he's got to be on
Here
there
he comes.
more.
You ready?
Theo should.
There he is. That's Theo. He's a
Psychic Chewini.
He's a psychic Chewini.
So this is where I know that I'm wealthy, because I say to people, if people offered me like $1 billion or my doggy, I'd choose my dog. So I'm wealthy already. Yeah. Beautiful dog you have. Theo is gorgeous. Theo rocks. Right?
This is Luna. Isn't she pretty?
This is the future for background.
Yeah.
Oh, that dog loves you. Look at that look.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't talk about anything else. I'm thinking doggies. Oh, they're beautiful.
We used to have a couple of cats, and sometimes one of them would walk in front of the camera like this. You'd see its tail going across.
Oh, they're lovely. They're lovely. They're great companions. And say the way you treat animals says a lot about you as a person.
Yeah. People like Gandhi and others have said similar things, you know. And Jesus, of course, said, whatsoever you do unto the least of these, you do unto me.
Yes, I agree. I think that we are creating the barbaric way that animals are treated, we're creating a very negative energy and force in the world. I mean, I'm not advocating, obviously I'm a vegetarian, of course I would be, but, you know, I don't have anything against people who aren't, as long as the animals are treated humanely. It's cruelty against animals. It's one of the reasons I think I said this on Russell, that I went off social media for several years, because some of the images of animal cruelty, I literally couldn't cope. I found them too upsetting, because I'd replay them in my mind. And I've had, you know, managed to deal with it now. But I just cannot understand how anyone could be cruel to. It's the innocence, I think.
Yeah, that's why people love them. It's the innocence.
Yeah. The trust.
Yeah. And again, it all comes back to, you know, like, here's an analogy. If you had a knife, let's say, that was sharp on both ends and didn't have a handle, and you stab somebody with that knife, you're also cutting your own hand, you know? And I think any kind of mistreatment of people or animals or anything else is like that knife. It hurts them, but it hurts you just as much, if not more.
Well, it's that beautiful thing is when you point a finger, there's one
Exactly.
finger.
There's three pointing back at you.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, God, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Alrighty. So is there anything else that we want to cover that you're going to not be able to sleep and dream tonight because we hadn't covered once we hang up and
No, I'm just no, I'm just love it. I really am very grateful for the opportunity and to talk to you. And I'm so glad I found your channel.
Yeah.
Spread the word about it. I'm just very grateful. Thank you.
Well, let's stay in touch. I can recommend some people to you who you might not be aware of that might be good to have on your podcast, and you're connected
Especially
with all
for the
kinds of people
Brits.
that you could tell us about.
Absolutely. Any guest on my podcast you'd like their contact, just let me know. As I say, Christopher Johnson, he's a very eloquent former member of a cult, and the Netflix documentary Holy Hell was, it's very famous, and he makes powerful and memorable appearance in that. He will get a lot of interest. Even Alexander.
Yeah, we had him scheduled at one point, sort of tentatively, but then it kind of fell through the cracks. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. We should do that.
Oh yes, you've got to let me know, and I'll connect you. He would love to.
Yeah.
He's a place in his life now when that's what he's doing. He's just spreading the word. Just trying to think, because obviously you want names that are going to draw.
Well, we can do it
interest
afterwards
as well.
too. I mean, by emails we can communicate about this. Irene chooses the guests and schedules them. So,
thank you, Irene.
She's saying thank you,
She's
Irene.
the power behind the throne.
She's the power behind the throne. I don't know. I think she's on the throne.
Oh gosh, no, but I'm just a shame you don't want me to do my Harry and Meghan commentary. But that's fine.
if you insist.
Well, it's taken over here in the UK at the moment. The media's awash with it. It's ridiculous. People are having opinions about it, and it's.
Well, it's almost that same principle we've been discussing, where people project something onto others and think of them as like special, and they should consume all the airtime because they're so famous or whatever. And we're not princes and princesses, and they are. And I don't know. It just seems kind of. It's a form of entertainment more than anything.
It is. It's entertainment. It's But what happened in your country, especially last year, is that your politics in particular became better than a Netflix series. I mean, we were over here in the UK. We were like watching it next installment. I mean, on the edge of
like a horror movie.
What happened to America in your opinion? What happened?
I don't know. I have been following the whole conspiracy theory thing a lot. I've interviewed 3 guys who have a podcast called Conspirituality, where they talk about the incursion of conspiracy thinking into the spiritual world, spiritual community. But obviously, whatever's going on in America goes far beyond just the spiritual communities. And you've probably seen the Netflix documentary. What is it called? The one about the social dilemma. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
So everybody's going down their own rabbit holes and getting more and more polarized. And as you were saying earlier, being more kind of entrenched in their particular perspectives and not being broad-minded to see multiple perspectives. And the whole social media thing reinforces that, and it's it's made politics unworkable. It's made families unable to talk to each other, and so somehow or other we've got to move beyond all that.
Obviously, I'm here in I'm a Brit-based author, but as I said, I had this opportunity last year to go on Coast to Coast for 2 hours. I did 2 hours of dream decoding. It was wonderful. They were really kind. But it was kind of going into that world, because obviously being on the line for 2 hours, and the adverts I was hearing, and it was all China virus, and I'm thinking, God, Theresa Chung, because obviously they, and it was like really kind of quite unsettling, and having my surname that I do, although I'm not Chinese, my husband is, it was kind of, I couldn't believe it. I was in this like. But also what I found when I went into that 2 hour on Coast to Coast was I could understand why people were believing this because there was a very family feel. There was a sense of belonging. You believe this and we'll give you this and you belong. It felt very almost weirdly reassuring because all the thinking had been done for you. So it was kind of a comforting experience also going into that world. I mean, they treated me they were lovely, actually. I had no complaints, but it was not, I didn't expect that.
I think another feature of is you get into a certain group like QAnon or something,
Yes.
and you feel like, oh, now I'm kind of in the inner circle. I really understand what's going on.
Yes.
Aren't I special?
Yes.
And all these other people are just sheeple who are being duped by the mainstream media, and they're blind. And it gives you a sense of its superiority, or it aggrandizes your ego, and then you get a hit on that.
It's very seductive. But it was an interesting
And it's like that with
experience for
regular
2
cults too. My
yeah.
guru is the best guru, and we're also enlightened, and everybody else is subpar.
Yeah. Everybody wants to feel special, but we can all feel special in our own unique way. We don't need to belong to a group. We can become. I think there's stages, aren't there? There's being, belonging, becoming, and bliss. I think of life like that, and I think we go through those stages in our life, and catch glimpses of bliss along the way.
Yeah.
But
Groucho Marx said, "I wouldn't want to join a club that would accept me as a member."
I like him. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Alrighty. Well, you and I could go on for another 2 hours, but
Oh, I love talking.
Yeah.
Oh, but you're just a gracious host. Thank you. I loved
thanks,
it.
Teresa. It's been a
Absolutely
lot of
loved it.
fun,
Thank you.
and the people watching have remained fairly consistently high, up in the 200 zone, despite all of our frivolity. So hopefully they found this entertaining.
And if you just want to skip to the end and say, watch the Disney Pixar movie Soul, that says everything I want to say
Yeah.
about life.
Gotta see
there.
that. Gotta see
Beautiful. You've got to, please. I'd love your thoughts on it because it's where I'm at now. Actually, it's wonderful.
that. Cool. I think I
Beautiful-
have to find out
beautiful movie.
where we can watch that. Okay.
It's all finding meaning where you don't think you're going to find it. It's all about that meaning isn't found where we all think it is.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. Okay, well, on that note, let's wrap it up. But we'll be in touch and keep cranking out the books. Maybe we'll do another interview when you hit the 200 mark.
Absolutely, I'm going. And you get to the 1,000.
Yeah, I'll
mark.
get to the
You-
1,000
you-
interviews, you get to the 200 books.
Probably when you go to the other side, you'll be interviewing all the angels as well. I can see it.
I probably will. This whole thing started, I was in this group, and we met every Wednesday night for about 3 hours in a little living room in some guy's apartment, and we sometimes packed like 30 people into this little living room, and we just had this spiritual discussion that went on for about 3 hours, and it was really kind of profound, and I really got a high off it. But I would kind of interview people. I would start probing people and asking them questions. And the ground rule was you're supposed to just talk about your own experience. And so the host of the thing kept saying, "Stop interviewing people. You're interviewing people." And finally, he was the one that pushed me to start this show. He said, "You should really be interviewing people. Why don't you start?"
Yeah, natural. That's your.
Yeah.
That's what you
So we
are.
got it going.
That's what you are. Natural curiosity. But curiosity is another foundation stone of spirituality for me. Curiosity
Yeah.
is a really important part of the spiritual journey.
Yeah, I think we both have that, and probably a lot of people who are watching this do too. It's like life is so fascinating, and there are just so many interesting things and people, and
Once you dip your toe into this, you're never bored again.
yeah,
Because there's always more to learn, isn't there, and to discover
absolutely.
in this in this journey.
Yeah, boredom is like I don't think I've felt bored for decades. I don't know what it feels like. It's because everything is fascinating.
It is, including sleep and dreams.
Absolutely.
Even when
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's stop rambling.
Thank you,
So,
Rick.
yeah.
And thank you, Irene. I know she's there.
Actually, she stepped out of the room, but
Oh, okay. Well, please thank her for
I
me.
will. And thank you to those who've been listening or watching. I hope you enjoyed this one.
Well, done for sticking with us. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for hanging in there. We're both a couple of goofballs, obviously. But so maybe it's just the goofballs stayed with us.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Anyway, next week I'm going to interview a guy named Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and I'm going to try an experiment with it because we sent out a form to the people that I'm going to interview, and we asked them like, what do you want Rick to watch? What do you want Rick to read? And all this stuff. And he said, I don't want you to watch anything or read anything. I want you to just know nothing about me, and we're going to have a conversation, which is the way Larry King used to do it. He didn't want to know anything about his guests. So I'll try that next week. I won't know anything about this guy. I can't tell you anything about him now, but
Rick, you're gonna Google. You know you
No,
are.
I'm going to resist. I'm going to listen to other stuff all week and read other stuff. I have a lot to catch up on.
You're gonna Google. I predict.
Well,
I'm going to be a precog. You're going to Google.
Oh, now I can't because you said I would. Anyway, that's what's happening next week. So thanks for listening or watching, and visit batgap.com and check out the menus and see what's there. You can sign up to be notified by email of new interviews. You can subscribe to the audio podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, which you probably are, please subscribe to the channel if you wish. And once you hit the subscribe button, a little bell pops up. And if you hit the bell also, then they really notify you when a new thing comes rather than just sporadically. Anyway, thanks, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Talk to you later.